we go.
Hey.
There we go. Welcome aboard, Lee.
Thank you. Right, hello everyone. Say if you get any questions or if you just want to heckle, just shout, no problem. Like I said to a few guys earlier, I'm from Wiltshire, so I live on the River Wylye. So the patterns tonight are going to be small chalk stream patterns. If I don't make a complete hash of this, then I'm quite happy to come back next year and do some still water patterns or something like that. But I'll just get myself sorted, and then if I get out of focus or anything, just say. Hopefully that'll be all right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, center screen.
We okay?
Yeah.
Right, so I'll start off with something reasonably big to get started with. I've tied all the patterns beforehand as well, just in case we have any disasters. But the first one I can do is a Mayfly pattern, a Danica pattern. So this is, I don't know if I'm trying to get the light better, but I call it's a Fezzy May. It's basically like the French partridge style Mayfly, but instead of the French partridge soft hackle at the front, it's we've got an English hen pheasant partridge, not an English partridge, hen pheasant soft hackle at the front. So I think it's just a better coloration, and there's a few little quirks in there as well. So I'll show you that one first, and then we'll go from there. So I'm going to do size 12 grip. These are brilliant for Mayflies, I think, because they're really light and strong.
Yeah, and because they're long, don't you stab yourself all the time?
Yeah, they're great hooks for Mayflies. So get that one in there. So you see that all right? Yeah. So sorry about the lighting, doesn't look great on my top little bit, but hopefully it'll be all right. So we just start off, get some thread on here, run down to the bend. Nice and cozy. It's the first time I've done a fly tying demonstration in my slippers.
In your slippers.
Yeah, got things good here. Tail, I'm just going to go with some cock pheasant centre tail. So I'm going to peel about 5 of them out, 5 or 6. So obviously, usual sort of drills, line the tips up. Offer them up for length. So I'm looking for about the same length as the hook shank. Hopefully timing a little bit longer than needed. It's always easier to pull them that way than it is to pull them that way. But yeah, I'm happy with that. And I'm just going to tidy that in. Tidy that all the way up. I think I started fishing with this pattern about 3 years ago, and it's been my go-to Mayfly sort of donor merger ever since. Really, it is a cracking pattern. I've made one little change now. This year I've made one little adaptation, which you'll see. The rib, all I'm going to use to tie in the rib is just some like 3 pound mono. I'm going to chew the end, just to rough it up, so you know how slippery mono can be. But you'll see one of my patterns in a bit, you'll see how slippery mono is. So there we go, we've got our tail and our rib in position. I'm just going to get some bit of hairs here, dab in. So you can do this with whatever sort of colours, you know, but any sort of, you know, Danica type colours. It's the same with the hen pheasant patches. Some of them are pale, some of them are dark, so you can make quite a nice variation of colour with the. So I just get my anchor point, spin out the dub in, and make a nice mayfly abdomen. There we go. So normally what would happen would be is you would sort of dub up to the front, tie in your hackles and whatnot. But with this one, I'm going to do a palmed hackle, but I'm only going to do the palmed hackle on the abdomen. We're not going to go any further with that. So it's a little bit different. So I'm going to grab a sort of a sandy dun cock hackle. So there we go. Put off the usual sort of a hackle preparation. Put off the stuff at the bottom. Excuse the state of my hands, I'm in a right mess. And then I'm going to tie that in just at the point where the abdomen meets the thorax. Trim off the waist. Plonk me thread back at the join there. Something Mr. Jardine taught me years ago was that before you start winding a hackle, always crease the stem. So like in origami where you crease the paper. So I fold the hackle tight against itself. Let's put a crease in the stem. And now I can wind. So I'm going to do a full turn at the front. Palm my way back through. Doesn't have to be many turns. Get my rib material. Oops. And then rib up through. Tied in. Trim off the waist. Use me scissor tips and just push them in on the stem of the palmer hackle just to get rid of that. I think I've got a stray tail fibre there that's gone awry. Only happens when you're doing demos, isn't it, I suppose? There we go. That's what I know. So now I get the my hen pheasant feather. So like I say, just the hen pheasant cape. So it's nice sort of mayfly type colours. You can get them slightly darker, natural variations. I don't know if you really see the colours properly on the thing, but this is like a darker one. So we get our feather, same drill as before, obviously with like the soft hackle feathers. Get rid of the stuff you don't want. I got the idea for this. So Steve Scoose, a friend of mine I fish with a lot locally here. He wrote his Grayling flies book, and he did the May franglais, and he also did a May anglais with English partridge. So this was just a little sort of, a step further than that, really. And this works a dream, this. So I'm just getting to the tip. I'm going to tighten by the tip. So there's our hen pheasant hackle ready to go. So I'm going to tie that in. So we're still at the junction between the abdomen and the thorax. So I'm going to tie that in there. So as opposed to having our soft hackle just wound at the head, this is going to be wound through the thorax. Trim that off. And I think it gives it a bit more depth. It also, well, as an actual insect, they haven't got all the legs and wings all coming out of the head, have they? It's all, it's all in the thorax area. but it also, when we finish the fly, you'll see I think it sort of sits on the water with its bum sticking up a bit more like the natural dun would. So for the thorax, I'm just going to get some more hares ear dubbing, but I'm going to go a much darker colour. And then because I do this with everything, I can't help it, but I love a bit of fox squirrel dubbing. So I mix this with everything because it's just so buggy and it's lovely stuff. So I'm going to mix more than I need of this because I'm going to use some of this in one of our next flies as well. So I'll just mix that in there a bit. There we go. I'll spin this on the thread. I just like to get that. When dubbing, I just like to get that spike. Once I've got the spike, we've got our anchor point, then we can tease it out. And wind our thorax on.
I just slightly out of focus, Lee.
Okay.
Where is the light?
Yeah, that's it then.
So is that better? Any better?
No, it's a bit worse.
It's a bit worse.
Yeah. You
No,
guys see that okay?
It's focusing on your shirt, Lee.
Yeah. So I don't know whether to
Have you got the
No, don't-
autofocus on?
I don't. How is there a way I can change that? I don't know how to change that.
Don't worry, Cloud. Yeah.
Is that any better or not?
No, it's focused on your shirt. You're probably better off having the light as you had it before.
What, just like that?
Yeah.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
That's a shame. Hopefully it'll be all right. So I'm going to get me hackle pliers, tease the fibres of the hen pheasant back. So what I'll do is anything that's a bit vague or whatever, I can always ping some photos of finished flies and that on the group.
Once you've finished, if you put a picture on the WhatsApp group,
Yeah.
they can all have a look at it on there then, can they?
Yeah, that's what I do. Yeah.
No
So
worries.
so I'm just palmering this hen pheasant feather up through the thorax. So I say it's very similar to like a French partridge pattern. But it's just a different feather and it's tied throughout the thorax. So that's that tied in. So now I'll just brush everything back. Tie a neat little head, hopefully. Well, I hope the focusing, because I've got some small flies to tie as well. So hopefully the focus might get hopefully it'll get a bit better, but you're going to see them. So when whip finishing, I've just done my whip finish, especially on light hooks like this, there's no point in having a whip finish if it's not, tight. So I've put my finger on the hook eye to support the hook and then pull the thread tight. So you've got a nice tight whip finish without straining the hook. So I'll trim off the thread, trim off the stem. And that's not the greatest, but you get the idea. There's a cracking Mayfly pattern. Sits lovely on the water. and it certainly works. It seems to work well. So that's the first one. So the second pattern I'm going to do is going to be the same size. Another Danica pattern. I'm going to do a spinner. So I don't know if anyone's seen. I've had a bit of a thing about mono loops and things like that for quite a while, and I did an article in the Guild Fly Dresser magazine. It's a pattern called Parachute and Badger, which is basically like a grey duster but with a postless parachute. So it was what is it, John Goddard book, I think. Yeah, John Goddard book years ago with the parachute and badger in, and I got quite interested in tying these parachutes without a post. But it was a real awkward way of doing it. The technique was a nightmare. So it would sort of basically, you'd have to get some thread on the hook, get some mono to do your mono loop parachute, and then you'd be tying a bit of mono in, and then securing that. The best way to secure it is to double it over and tie it in again. But then basically you've got to tie the whole rest of the fly with this bit of mono in. You know, you've got to try and put a tail in. It's a nightmare trying to tie a fly without dangling around getting in the way. It's an absolute nightmare. So I came up with a much easier way to tie them. So I'm sure I'm not the first person to come up with it, but it's much easier. So I'll show you. So these flies, they do come with a bit of a warning because they're brilliant, but they're really hard to see because obviously it's a parachute without a post, which is great. I'm convinced fish can see posts, which is, you know, if you're imitating a dun, that's fine. You know, the fish are expecting to see, you know, a wing of some description floating towards them. But I think with tricky fish, sometimes, you know, this flat approach is much more sort of stealthy. The only problem is they're really hard to see, you know, impossible to see at range. The rivers I fish around here, it's all small, short range stuff, so it's fine. You know, you're not fishing at range. So even if you can't see them, you're just looking for a rise and just strike the rise. So they're great fun to tie. And so I'm going to go for a bit of posh tail, bit of Coq de Leon. So basically with this method you can just go on, tie the fly, not have to worry about the mono bit until later. So I got a nice Coq de Leon. So I'll tease out about 6 fibers, something like that of that, maybe a little bit more. Line the tips up. Offer it up for length. So it's a spinner, so you want the tail quite long. So that'll do. That's fine. Same as before, tidy that in. Trim off the waist. Trim it off with a nice flat cut, so there's no sort of step. Bend. And a spinner pattern, so I'm looking for some nice pale dub, and I'm just going to go with the hair again. What a really nice pale spinner, Danica Spinner. So get some little clumps in this dubbing, so I'm just going to tease it out and get rid of the clumps. There. Just create a nice mayfly abdomen. Also do this on size, this is a size 12, but it's quite small. You can do it on size 10s as well. So there is our abdomen ready. Just get rid of it. Now it's the parachute bit, the mono loop bit. So I'm going to take about 4 inches of £3 mono. I'm going to line the tips up. So we've got the 2 tips together. This fly is a lot easier doing this with a gallows tool, but I've just come used to using my thumb, sticking my thumb in it. So I'm going to tie it so that the 2 ends are protruding over the eye. You just tie as normal, but just don't cinch down hard too much on it. So we'll just get some thread wraps on there. And you'll see how, like I said, how slippy mono is a material. I can literally tie what I want on that thorax, and I can still slide the mount mono backwards and forwards. So we're going to I'll get and tie our hackle in now, which is just going to be a grizzle cock. So with this, I want the fibre length to be about the length of the body of the fly. So you think these are imitating the wings. So let's try that one. Let's see on this side. Focus any good or not? There we go. So we got our hackle prepared. Got a nice fine stem, this hackle. So it's ideal for doing this this fly. So I'm going to tie that in at the join between the thorax and the abdomen. And then we can cut off the waist. Didn't quite make up enough dubbing, I don't think, the dark dubbing I wanted, so I'll just add a bit more of that. So basically now we're just going to go on and dub the thorax. So it's got some of the nice spiky fox squirrel fibres in it. So when it comes to this bit, where this is where the parachute's going to be, you want an even amount of dubbing in front and behind. If you want the parachute to lie on a flat plane, if you have more dubbing at the front, it'll make the parachute be sort of higher at the front. So just be mindful of dubbing evenly both sides. So I'll get a turn of dubbing behind, maybe 2. And then, so just dub thorax, and that's basically it. A little bit more dubbing at the eye. So there we go. So now for the parachute. So our mono is still sliding through. So I'm going to put my thumb in the loop and using both hands. This is where both hands come in handy. So I'm going to do a turn around. Do a couple of turns. Put your finger in the loop and just nudge it down. Try and keep it all down against the fly. So you do several turns. Keep packing it down. And you're basically looking to see, keep going until you get the parachute density you want. Packing it down. So I'm sort of pretty happy with that. So now to trap the parachute, I'm going to put the hackle through the loop once, tease it down, through the loop twice, tease it down. I'm going to slide my fingers down the mono and then literally just pull that tight. And then it's just a case of tying that in. Trim off the waist. Do a nice whip finish. So it's sort of minimalistic, this pattern. It's basically an abdomen, a thorax, and legs, but that's basically all the mayfly is, isn't it, really? So it's wings. So we just trim that off there. Now for belt and braces, so I'll put a little spot of varnish in there. Just make sure that it's not, you don't want it soaking through into the dubbing of the, so just tiny little bit of Benedici or something, just to belt and braces, just to help stick that. So there we go. Hopefully you can see it. So it's got a nice big parachute for imitating the wings. There's nothing to be seen above water, so it just lays flat in the water, just like the natural spinner would. So that's the second pattern.
That's a nice footprint as well.
Yeah, it does the trick. So they're just a real pig to see. That's the problem. But then if you're only fishing short range river stuff, you know, you could. We're not allowed to do it on rivers around here, but you know, if you could fish 2 flies, especially with the next fly you're going to see, well, a couple of them, they are hard to see. So you could do like the dry fly duo, where you've got a fly and also an indicator, or if you can fish 2 dries, you know, you can, one you can see, and if you see a rise anywhere near that, you know it's your fly. So, but it is a nice fly and it works well. So, and it's a fun technique as well. I enjoy tying these. So the next one we're going to do is something very similar but smaller. So I'm going to go on to a 14 dry fly. This was when Charles did an article in FF and FT sort of regarding this fly. It's like a blue winged olive spinner, same technique, but we're just going smaller. So you'll see it basically it's the same thing again, but you'll see. Hopefully the focus is going to be all right on it, or sometimes we go a different thread, like a rusty coloured thread.
What thread is it?
It's this is just a sample fly, but it's just a rusty colour.
Is that
sorry?
It waxed.
Yeah, 80 waxed.
Yeah,
Classic thread 80 waxed. I've always been a UTC fan. I love using UTC thread, a nice flat thread, but the quality just seems to have gone now. I heard a rumour that the 2 ladies who did all the spooling and dyeing have either left or I don't know what's happened, but the UTC quality's just drastically gone downhill. So it's a shame because I love using that. So now we're going to do same as before. So rusty thread back to the, and this fly really is a pig to see on them, but it is really good. It's an amazing fly, and I think that is the secret, because the fish aren't seeing anything untoward. They're not seeing any sort of, you know, bright posts or indicators. I'm convinced they can see them. So a lot of the time it doesn't matter. But so now I'm going to get some more coq de leon for a tail material. This is more of like just sort of a dun sort of coloured coq de leon. So I'm going to get 5 or 6, 5, 6 spiders of that, something like that. So just line the tips up. Offer it up for length. It's always better to tie the tails too long because it's always easier to pull them that way than it is to pull them the other way. One good trick I learned is always use your scissors like a pair of calipers. So if you are tying classic proportions and you want your tail to be the same as the shank length or whatever you, or if you want to measure hackles against the gauge of the hook, the gape of the hook, use your scissors. So you can hold your scissors to measure the shank of the hook, and then offer it across to, you know, compare to whatever you want to measure. We've got, I mean, cats outside meowing at the door. So let me get that tied in. Trim off that. Trim off that. So now I'm going to get some rusty dubbing. So this is just a fine alpaca dubbing in rust. So I'm going to want a tiny little bit of this. It's nice and sparse, this fly. So I'll get the thread back to the bend. Wind on some of the alpaca dubbing. Tighten it up. I've got my anchor point. I can tighten the dubbing up a bit. A nice sparse spinner colour. There we go, and then we can slough off what we don't need. Just use up that last bit. So this is the same drill as before. So we get ourselves good 3 or 4 inches of mono again, about 3 pound mono. Line up the tips, have the tips protruding over the eye. Tie it in, not too tight. So you can just tie as normal. Don't worry about having to sort of tie loosely. It's such a slippy material. You can so again, we want a grizzle hackle with the fibres about the same length as the fly, so that's good. I'm going to tie that in on the far side. Stems being difficult to get. Oh, I just cut it off before. So there we go. So we have our mono loop and our parachute, or hackle tied in, sorry. So now I'm going to go same sort of colour dubbing, but this one's just a little bit coarser. So I always have finer dubbing for the abdomen, something a little bit darker and coarser for the thorax. But I can share all the ingredients, all the what dubbings and that they are, if you like, on the nice ping the pictures. So the same again, make sure the dubbing is even both sides, so the parachute sits nice and neatly, nice and flat. There we go. Tease back the fibers. There we go. So we've got our abdomen and thorax. So I'm going to put my thumb in the loop again. And I go round a few times. Tamp it down. And a few more, tamp it down. I think I've got about the right parachute density there. So now I go the hackle through the loop once, through the loop twice. Hold it down with your fingers. Pull the mono loops tight. And I'll show you how far you can go with this. This is you can go ridiculously small with this technique. It's just so that's that. So I just whip finish.
So what's that one, Lee? A rusty dun?
Yeah, it's a blue-winged olive. Blue-winged olive spinner. Bit crammed at the eye there, so I used a good old thumbnail just to tease things back a little bit. And the same again. So just using the very scissor tips, just sneak in there and nip off the.
That's a good technique, that is.
Just press it flat. I forget it was I think it was a Dutch guy who sort of came up with it first. They're good fun to tie, but shouldn't you get the hang of it? And a little blob in the. So it's just basically you can just add a parachute to anything without a post. So there you go, nice and flat, nice spinner. There you go. And like you say about how far you can take it, hopefully the camera will zoom in. I've got an aphid, so it's basically it's a size 18 light grub hook, but it's tied really short. So the fly is probably a 22. So it's just a tiny bit of like chartreuse grister dubbing with a mono loop parachute. So it's just a little speck of green with a parachute on it. So ideal for when the the fish are supping on the aphids and that.
Is that still with the £3 mono?
Yeah. I'd probably go down to like £2 when you get really small.
Yeah.
So, but it's just a cool technique, parachutes without posts. But I'll go on something nice and simple now. This is a really cool. It's only one material, well, two materials if you count the thread. It's basically just a CDC Sedge. Hopefully that zoom in focus nicely.
Yeah.
It is just a sedge made out of CDC. It's a nice simple tie, but it's one that I use time and time again. If you throw it in a tree, you don't care because it's just so basic. So we're going to go with a size 14 on the grip hooks again. Thread on there. Right, got some CDC prepared, hopefully. So yeah, so basically this is like 4 CDC feathers and a bit of waste CDC. So I would start off with 2 reasonably small CDC feathers. Obviously, if you tie this smaller, you can tie this on any sizes you want, you know, basically. Sort of size 10 to, well, long shank to down to size 20s or what have you. Sedges come in all sizes, don't they? So it's so I've basically got 2 reasonably small CDC feathers. I'm going to line up the tips and then just moisten it just so I can sort of fold them back. And I want to tie that in. There's like a short tail. They're not lined up very well, so I'll do that again. Okay, so just tie that in as a short tail. Not that short. There we go. I've got a nice little short CDC tail. I run the thread up, just get everything tied in and tidy. Cut off on a flat cut so we don't have any bulges anywhere. And for this pattern, like these are a bit small, but any big CDC offcuts, I will save the fibres. I'll cut off, strip them off for dubbing. I always like, I must admit, I'll always cut them off. I don't like pulling the fibres off. You always end up with like the little
Little bits of white.
yeah, the little gnarly curl bits on the end. And they just annoy me. It's just me being silly, I expect. But so I always like to cut them off when I'm doing the seed making, sort of using offcuts to make dubbing. I like to cut them off. So at this stage, we're going to now dub the abdomen. You could do it in a different color if you wanted to. You could do like a nice sort of sedge green or a brown or whatever you wanted. I find normally from a fishing point of view, it's just the natural CDC tends to work pretty well. I don't think the fish seem to mind. So I've just got a load of offcuts of CDC here. I'm just going to dub on to create an abdomen. There was I got the idea for this. There's no way my pattern or anything. It's just one that I saw it. It was in a magazine years ago, and I'm sure it was called an S-fly or something. And it was basically exactly the same as this. The only difference is they had they used bare CDC stems as antennae. But I think that's you know, step too far. I didn't really want to. So just get. And I like CDC as dubbing because it's buggy. You always get lots of bits sticking out, and which also, you know, makes it look alive. Movement also helps it float. So I'm going to dub right the way up there. So now I'm going to come back with a thread and tie in a wing. But you've sort of dubbed right the way up. You've got yourself a nice foundation to tie on from here. So I may as well just go all the way up while I'm at it. There we go. So now I'm going to run the thread back to nearly halfway, about a third, I suppose. And we're going to get 2 more CDC feathers, slightly bigger. If you were tying this on, you know, as a bigger sedge on like a long shank or, you know, a big sort of size 10, you might want 3 feathers for a wing, you know. So same drill again, line up the tips. Just going to tease all the fibers together, a little moisten. When I'm picking the feathers for this, I'm always looking for the fibers with the structure, not just the, you know, really thin feather fibers. I'm looking for the ones that look fluffy and have got the feather structure, because they're the ones that, you know, hold the air bubbles and float like corks. So now I'm gonna offer that up. So the concave side is going to be down. So we want the wing to be just short of the tail. So we're trying to create the nice little tent profile of the sedge. So I just offer that up just short of the wing, hopefully. And then we can pinch and loop that on there. Tie that in. And then flat cut again. Just trim that off. So there's our wing. And then run the thread back up to where we tied in. And now it's just a case of dubbing more CDC fibers just to create a slim thorax. So these flies, when you look at them in nature, they have got like a, you know, a lot of the sedges you buy are like massive, like cheese wedge type, you know, shapes. But the sedges have got a, you know, a taper to them, but they're nowhere near. They are very slim flies. So we'll just dab on some of that. And this is a lovely buggy little pattern. Floats like a cork. Obviously, I've got to tie a few, because once you've had a few fish on it, you know, it gets a bit drowned. And so I just like to tie a load and then catch a fish, change fly, let it dry out. I've always been a crammer, so you always have the thumbnail at the ready just to push things back a little bit if need be. So let's get that out of the way. So whip finish. Same again, get the whip finish tight, or support the eye of the hook, put it tight. Then we can trim off. Little dot of varnish if you fancy it on the. Like I say, the original, I'm sure they called it an S fly. I've looked for it since and can't find it anywhere. I think it was in a, I don't know if it was in a trout and salmon or an FF and FT, but it was basically this, but it had the two waist CDC stems curling up, and you know, it's like a nice little antennae. But it's a cracking little fly. Very simple. So if you throw it in a tree, you're not too worried about it. But so that's that pattern. Now I'm going to do it's a pattern I came up with probably about 10 years ago now. It's another really small, it's a small, hard to see job. So hopefully a bit of focus on it. But it was one I called the Millroy. It's a bit like a Griffith Gnat, but it's tied on a flat plane. So we got a palmer hackle where we cut it top and bottom, so it sort of sits flat like a super pooper, which is another local pattern that everyone seems to do really well here. So so we'll tie one of them quickly. So sticking with the grip hooks, this is a Emerger Pupa 18, but it's their sizes are a bit funny, so it's a very small 18. So we get that in there. So some black thread.
Looks like a grub hook, Lee.
Yeah, I tie a lot of dries on grub hooks. I just like the wide gape of it. This also works very well on the Dohiku 301. size 20 is very good because that has got a really nice wide gape on it as well. It's strange, that hook seems to have a wider gape. The size 20 seems to have a wider gape than the size 18. It's really strange, but that's a really nice hook to tie these on. So I'm going to do like a sort of a peachy coloured sort of butt on it. So this orange aero wing is really good because it's the sort of it's almost like a sort of salmony coloured sort of orange. It's not like a, you know, what we would normally call like an orange. So that's a nice colour to use as a butt. I used to use the old Lure Flash Peach. There's sort of a bit of an antique now. I've still got one card of that, but anything like that I do. There's some like salmon coloured egg yarn, anything like that's fine. It's just to get like a peachy tag. So I'll take some of this aero wing off, which I don't know how they make it cost so expensive, this aero wing. It's ridiculous. But so we're not going to need all of that. So I'm just going to tease out hopefully about 10 fibers. So there we go. So I don't know if this stuff adds to the buoyancy or not, but it's nice stuff to use. So we've got our sort of 10 fibers of that. So I'm now I'll tie that in, carry on round the bend a little bit. So now I'm going to wind this as like a peachy butt. And what I'll do is I'll spin it up a little bit, because otherwise as you're sort of winding it starts splaying apart. So to keep it under control, I'll just spin it up a bit. So this is great for trout and grayling. You just fish it whenever you think the fish is sort of sipping on small stuff, any small black stuff. We seem to have had a real population explosion of the alder beetles, and this seems to be a good seems to work well. So there's our peachy butt. So I'll tie that in. I just thought I'd just leave that tag end and cut them off together, just cutting them off separately. So run the thread up there. Do a nice flat cut again so we don't have a step. Tidy that in. So again, like, sorry, but this is a pattern. This really is a pig to see. But on short range fishing, I'm just looking for the rise. It works. So now we're going to get black cock hackle, and I want about the fibre length to be the length of the fly again. So let's try that one. So I'll strip off waste at the bottom of the hackle. Just check it for length. That's somewhere handy. Bigger actually. That's better. Yeah. So now what I'm going to do, pull off the waste on the butt end of the hackle, and I'm going to tie it in so that the good convex side of the feather is against the shank. So concave side up. So I'm going to tie that in. I'm going to do what you normally try to avoid. I'm going to tie it so that I'm actually trapping fibers as I go back. And the reason for that is when you come to bend it forward to wind a tail, wind the hackle, it's created a tail. So not only have we got some outrigger hackles coming out both sides, we've also got a tail on it as well for a little bit of extra support. So we've got that tied in. Let's cut off the hackle stem. We've got some lovely bronze peacock herl from Mr. Cooper. So I'm going to use one herl to make this a bit stronger to use. Instead of just tying it in by the tip and winding it, I'm going to tie it in somewhere in the middle. So I get a turn. But quite often tie my deal backs like this as well. So we'll just get one turn on there, another turn sort of next step up, fold that back, and then tie that in. So we've now got two fibres of peacock herl that we wind together. Now I run the thread up towards the eye. We can wind the herl body. When I'm tying in materials, I don't know if it's sort of been noticed before, but I always hold the material up as I'm tying it in. So I hold it up, get two turns on it and a turn in front. The reason I hold it up is so that when you come to trim off the waist, you're nowhere near the thread. So the material's coming down and you know you go to trim it off, you've got a chance of cutting the thread. You've got hardly any chance of cutting the thread with the material poking up. Because there's a horrible sound here in the bobbin holder hit the table. So now same drill as before. We'll put a crease in the hackle before we wind it, just fold it forward. And then we'll do a full turn at the back and then just palm it up through. And then finish at the head. Two turns on that, that's not going anywhere. Do the fibres back, tie a neat little head. And whip finish.
What did you call that? The Millroy?
No, it's named after my grandfather. I was my late grandfather. I was rummaging through his fly box years ago, and I found it was like a sort of a Grayling witch fly with a black hackle, the peacock herl body, and like a sort of the peachy sort of butt on it. So that's where I sort of got the idea for it. I thought, well, you know, it might be something that works, a colour combo that works. So I just changed the tying of it and sort of came up with this. They use the super poopers a lot on the rivers. I don't know if you're aware of the super pooper pattern. It's basically, I always think of it like a flat clink hammer. You've got like a super fine sort of yellow or sort of tan abdomen on like a standard dry fly hook. A darker thorax, you have a palmed hackle wound right the way up it, and then you trim it top and bottom, so you only have hackle fibers coming out the sides. So it's again, it's another, this sort of be the difficult to see tying demo thing, because there's a, when it's on the water, it's really hard to see it again, but the fish like it, you know. It's, I think they take it for a emerging sedge, you know, it's like a sedge pupa, floating sedge pupa. So we just trim that off. Little dab of varnish on there. And now it's just a trimming game. So obviously always be aware that there's no such thing as a putting back on tool. So it's just a case of trimming out the bottom and the top so that you just end up with hackles coming out the sides. So you can get quite anal about doing this, but it's, as long as it's basically, you want to make sure the bottom is flat, because that's where it sits, you know, sits glued in the surface film. So I don't know how well you can see that with the not great focus, but So there you go. So that is a Millroy. And I'll do a nicer one in the photo for, I don't know how you can see that, but I'll do a close-up. I got some close-up photos of them anyway that I can do for the, to ping on the group chat. Yeah. So that's, I haven't got any other patterns. That sort of went a bit quicker than I thought, really.
That's the way it goes, isn't it?
Yeah, so sort of flew through them a bit, but if you're happy with that, that's
Yeah, it's really nice.
good.
Thanks very much, Lee. Excellent stuff.
Pleasure, no worries. So I'll get some decent photos because I'm sorry if the focus wasn't very good, but I'll get some decent photos and share them on the group, and then you can, and I'll do some pattern dressings as well with materials if you want, and share them on the group.
Magic.
Great. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah,
All right,
thank you very much.
thank you.
Super.
Thanks very much, Lee. Thank
Yeah,
you.
No worries. Pleasure.
Great.
All the
Thanks
best, mate. Thank you, Lee.
No worries.
Thanks very much, Lee. That was really interesting.
No worries. Well, I've a play with the monolink parachutes. There, it's quite fun. It's a bit. It takes a bit. It's a lot easier with a gallows tool. If you've got a gallows tool, it's easier. But I've just got used to sticking my thumb in. So, but they are fun, and they're fun to fish with, even though you can't see them.
It's a Peterson Lee fly.
Yeah.
Okay, good night, everyone.
Good night. Cheers.
No, thank you.
Thanks very much indeed. Appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Thanks.
Yeah,
No
good
worries.
night. Good night.
Magic. Thanks, Lee.
No worries. Cheers. I'll see you soon. Thanks.
Thanks again, Lee.
Cheers.